The next speaker is Auyang. He's the Executive Director of Transport International Holdings. And for those of you who are in Hong Kong, that is Kowloon Motor Bus. Just so that we don't forget, Kowloon Motor Bus is one of the biggest bus companies in the world. And Evans is the only person on my panel who's from the business sector. But I've always enjoyed talking to him because of his interest in also looking at the whole and not just from his own company's perspective. So Auyang, Evans Auyang only has 5 minutes. So let's see how he does.
Okay, challenging time slot here. Now, let me just jump into it. We have been talking about urbanization for the last 2 days, and perhaps nowhere is it as prominent as it is in China, where we're looking at huge growth and migration of a rural population into cities. Now, up to 2025, we'll see probably about 1 billion population in urban cities, and that's going to put a lot of constraints on cities. But that's good from the perspective of urban planning and transportation because it's efficient. At the end of the day, and when you have concentration of population, your investment per capita on infrastructure costs will be low. However, before all this happens, just look at the current number of vehicles on road. And you can see that in the past 10 years alone, it's 600% growth in vehicles, in private vehicles alone. And that's going to put a lot of constraints on the city's development, and it's clearly unsustainable. Now, if you were to look at Beijing, for example, just maybe show of hands, who has been stuck in the Beijing congestion before? Anyone? All right, most of the room. So you know what that looks like, okay? So imagine 10 years ago, if you were there 10 years ago, now it's even worse, right? Now, if you look at infrastructure investment in China, it's actually not small. If you look at the roads being built, this is talking about urban roads here, it's 6.4% per annum. It's actually quite tremendous from a city's perspective. But it's not catching up with demand. Demand, if you look at private vehicles alone, is 16.8% per annum. Now, at the end of the day, you look at Los Angeles, look at many other developed cities, you can never build yourself out of a congestion. Now, as a public transport operator, I can actually tell you that Hong Kong struggles a lot with that as well. So what happens is that you see average commuting times by bus and public transportation increasing, and therefore you're in the vicious cycle of increasing vehicles, slowing down everybody else, and then you have people probably want to personalize a little bit more, leads to even more inefficiencies. Now, I noticed that we've never really talked about Hong Kong, even though we're in Hong Kong. So here's a slide on Hong Kong. Some of you may realize that Hong Kong is actually the #1 public transport city in the world. 88% of the population here uses public transport. If you look at what really is the breakdown of it, is railways and buses. Double-decker bus, one of the KMB buses here is double-deck. It's so dense here, right? So economics work really well here. And I can even claim that if you want to look at economics of transportation in the city, all you take a look at is the height of the buildings, right? So it's possibly correlated. Now, if you look at about 12 million public transport trips being done a day, you got 5.8 on buses and light buses per day, and 5.3 on railways. Now, these are high-capacity transport systems, and that's doing very well. However, we're still struggling. If you look at the past 5 years alone, private cars have actually increased by 26%, and our roads are growing at about 1% a year. Okay, so it's, again, unsustainable. And what this actually does is that it slows down buses. So we have just in the past 5 years alone, 18% decrease in bus speeds. And that's a big problem. At the end of the day, if public transport cannot provide you with the right level of service, you're going to put yourself in a private car. And this, being a city of actually the lowest car ownership, one of the lowest car ownerships in the world, is increasing. So we can never say that, well, we plan infrastructure, built ahead of time, and we can solve the problems. Even in a city like this, it's a problem. So what's a typical solution? Now, we talk about this all the time, and even the company we're in, KMB, we've been looking at different technology buses, right? This is to reduce air pollution and have a better carbon footprint. Now, I'm not going to go through all this because we all know where this is leading to. This is one part of the solution, which is to invest in technology. It will cost X billions of dollars to reduce a certain degree of footprint. Now, what I'm more interested in as a business leader is what I call climate change cost curve. Now, going back to the days when before my time at KMB or Transport International, when I was at McKinsey, we did some work on climate change cost curve. And this is very important because it actually lines up how much is the cost to reduce per ton of carbon from priority. Now, if you look at this section, this is basically the cost, and this is the abatement potential in percentage. I'm just talking about a truck here. And this here is what we call the negative cost category. Now, there's no reason politically not to go after all the negative cost categories. And as a business leader, I will go after all of these things. And what are these things? These are load factors, right? Improving load factors, eco-driving, lightening up lightening up the weight of the bus, better drivelines, etc. This stuff is the sort of the technological solutions that we talk about. Now, this isn't easy, even though it seems obvious, because at the end of the day, we still need a lot of alignment. And what this number one thing here that I have been working on the past 5 years or so is route reorganization. What route reorganization is essentially about is to look at individual routes, how they're serving the community right now, and how do you make them more efficient in terms of carrying capacity, in terms of actually routing, so that you can actually increase bus speeds. Now, if you look at the portfolio of solutions, just very quickly here, it's actually not rocket science. Now, obviously, we strengthen city planning overall is a very important thing so that we can actually be efficient as a city. And invest early and deeply in the public transport systems to actually make us more energy efficient. And these are things that we don't actually debate with. Of course, there are things that are harder, which is called managing demand, focusing more on public transport, and managing private cars' growth. And that requires some sacrifice. And obviously, policy needs to come in as well to regulate against, obviously, businesses making the right decisions. And obviously, communicating is all important. But in sort of going back to the politics of all this, it's never actually very easy. Now, in actually doing route reorganization, what we have experienced is that we have 400 districts in Hong Kong. And in discussing one particular route, we can actually go through 20 to 30 districts. Everybody will have their say in saying how it's going to be done. Now, at the end of the day, we heard that politics is about adjudication of differences from Benjamin. I understand that. But at the end of the day, my issue is that with this adjudication, sometimes progress is not really being made very rapidly. Now, what I ask myself is that what more can we do to actually say that besides saying political courage, which sometimes we mean, hey, they need to have the political courage to actually make the difference. We need to ask ourselves, even though I'm not a policymaker, what can I do personally to actually align the stakeholders to make a difference? At the end of the day, this is commercial interest and this is good for the environment. Why can we do more? Thank you very much.